Gonzaga finally played well to begin a second half, leading to a comfortable win over Washington State. Is this a sign of good things to come for Mark Few's club?
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Monday and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by Game Time. Folks, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Well, both the men's and women's teams handled Washington State on Saturday. The men at home in the kennel, the women going on the road to beat the Lady Cougars in Pullman. We're going to talk about both those games, key performances, star performers, keys to the game, all that stuff, what it means for each of these programs as well. We start in the McCarthy Athletic Center, where the men handled Washington State 88-75, a final score that actually looks a little closer than this game was, particularly in the second half. The Zags moved to 5-0 in conference play, 14-4 overall, have now won 7 of their last 8 games against Washington State, with the most recent game prior to this one being all the way back in 2015, which is when Gonzaga and Washington State ended their home-and-home series. Of course, now going forward, Gonzaga and Washington State will play each other at least 2 times a year indefinitely this year and next year in the WCC. After that, as both teams transition into the Pac-12. We're going to talk about the good things and the bad things we saw in this game, starting with Gonzaga getting off to a hot start in the second half. And it's probably not the most critical thing that happened in this game, but it is critical in the sense that Gonzaga has really struggled in this area all season long. Even in Gonzaga's best games this year, even against Baylor, even against LMU to an extent, even against, maybe not like UMass Lowell and some of the weaker opponents that they've played, but in some of Gonzaga's better games, their biggest area of weakness in those games was the first few minutes of the second half. And of course, in Gonzaga's not so good games against Kentucky and UConn in particular, that slow start in the second half was what undid them from winning those basketball games. In this game, Gonzaga was out 10-3 to start the second half. They were at one point 21-7 to start the second half, at one point 30-13. There's no possible other way to look at it. Gonzaga finally, for the first time this season, had a strong start to a half. Not only made whatever adjustments Mark Few discussed in the halftime speech, but went out, executed them, had that kind of oomph, that energy, that kind of gusto that we haven't seen from this team this season, where they either get out coached at halftime and the other team makes adjustments that Mark Few and the Zags are not ready for, or they're failing to execute whatever adjustments they were supposed to make, failing to adjust to whatever the opposing team is doing. It was really nice to see that not be the case, because Gonzaga had their moments in the first half. It wasn't like a huge struggle necessarily, but Wazoo hung with them. That's a good Washington State team. They played with them. They hit some key shots. Gonzaga struggled out of the gate to shoot it. I think they were one of their first 7 from 3. Ryan Nembhard sat for most of the last half of the first half, and so there was just kind of we kind of felt like this is the game where if Gonzaga doesn't get out, this thing's going to be close all the way through. Doesn't mean they won't win, but it felt realistic that if Gonzaga does what they've been doing and gets outscored by 5 or 8 in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the second half, that this is going to be a game that comes right down to the wire. And instead, Gonzaga built a lead all the way up over 20 at one point and ultimately coasts to a 13-point win. Huge part of Gonzaga's win was Nolan Hickman. What an incredible performance from the senior guard. 19 points for him, 7 rebounds and 3 assists. He was 7 of 10 from the field, including 5 of 8 from the three-point line. He played 38 minutes and had just 1 turnover in this game. We mentioned Ryan Nembhard. We'll talk more about that a little later on, but he sat for 10 minutes in the first half. That is extremely rare for Nembhard, and Hickman had to step into a bigger role, has 19 points in this one. Again, 5 of 8 from 3. Bad day for the haters. Bad day for the Nolan Hickman haters. In case you think, there's not haters anymore, I got a recent email from a hater, somebody who told me that it would be a miracle if I were able to change their mind about Nolan Hickman being the 8th best player on this team. I'm not a miracle worker. I also don't spend my time trying to convince people of things that they do not want to be convinced of. So if this didn't do it, I'm not sure what's going to. It's not up to me. Sorry. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you do. I really do. I hope that it was fun to watch Nolan Hickman do what he did, because I had a blast. I had an absolute blast watching him drop 19, watching him hit clutch three after clutch three, watching him seemingly not miss in this game and will this team to victory in a game where Ryan Nembhard sat on the bench far more than he typically does. Another great performance from Graham Ike as well. 21 points on 8 of 11 shooting. That super inconsistent Graham Ike. I don't want to say it's gone. I don't, because you never know. It could pop up again. But man, has he been great in the last few weeks of this season. 21 points for him, like we said, 5 boards, 3 assists, a block, and a steal. He did have 3 turnovers. It's not great. It's also not a huge problem for a player with the usage rate that he has, especially when he's not going to be missing shots like he did in this one. He was also 5 of 5 from the free throw line, continues to be an absolute warrior in that space, and was a key part of Gonzaga's win here. Zags 47% from 3, 10 of 21. They were also 24 of 40, 60% on 2-pointers. We mentioned Ike and Hickman as the 2 stars, but I would also shout out the other 2 bigs, Ben Gregg and Braden Huff. Gregg had 11 points, 9 boards, and 5 assists. He also had a steal and shot 5 of 9. Huff had 10 points on 4 of 4 shooting. Perfect from the field. Didn't play a ton of minutes because Graham was great, but for him to not miss a single shot was a huge, huge strength for the Zags in this one. The bad stuff, Ryan Nembhard's first half was really ugly. It was uncharacteristic. He was out of sorts. He picked up a frustration foul 80 feet away from the basket, which led to him getting benched for the last 9 minutes of the first half, against something that we almost never, ever see from Nembhard. He had a better second half. He scored all 9 of his points in the second half, didn't score in the first half. He finished with 5 assists. 9 points, 5 assists is a bad night for Ryan Nembhard. It's not a horrible night for other players. As a lot of teams have a starting point guard who averages 9 and 5. 5 assists is would be 3rd in the WCC, I think, or 4th in the WCC. So it really wasn't like a terrible night. It was just a bad Ryan Nembhard game, especially that first half where he just seemed out of sorts. Again, committing fouls, turnovers. He had 3 of them, which is uncharacteristic for him. He did knock down a sweet step back 3 in the second half. He had that phenomenal throw ahead pass to Braden Huff, a 60-foot pass that hit him right in the perfect spot for an easy lay-in. Just some really good stuff from Ryan, even despite his overall game, particularly in the first half, not being up to the par that we hold him at typically. Caleb Battle, this is part of the Caleb Battle's experience. Sometimes he just has games where he misses a lot of shots. 10 points, 4 of 13 shooting, 2 of 6 from 3. He had 4 fouls and 2 turnovers. Just a kind of a sloppy game from Battle. Again, for Nembhard to miss as much time as he did in the first half, for Battle to have a rough game, that's a recipe for disaster for Gonzaga in many ways. To have 13 turnovers in a game is very much a recipe for disaster, but all of that is wiped away by the fact that Gonzaga's front court was so great in this game. And then Nolan Hickman and Dusty Sturmer, we'll talk about him a little bit later, having really strong games, helped catapult Gonzaga to not only a win, but a fairly comfortable win against a good team, a quad 2 victory. We'll hope it stays there. Obviously, the Pacific loss is going to put that in a bit of a tenuous spot. The road game against Wazoo should be quad 2 if this one ends up quad 3, which could happen. But regardless, can't control whether Wazoo ends up quad 2 or quad 3, but you can control whether you beat them, and Gonzaga managed to knock that out in a fairly convincing fashion on Saturday. Well, some of the other things in this game, Gonzaga scored a ton of points off turnovers. They succeeded in getting Washington State's bigs in foul trouble. Those were 2 of our 5 keys to victory for the Zags. We're going to talk about those and 3 others all coming up in just a second. But first, folks, taxes used to be dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. Now taxes are easy. Uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation, an expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-tracks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed, all while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is taxes with Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we're still relishing Gonzaga's win over the Cougars of Washington State on Saturday. A comfortable 88-75 victory where the Zags got out to a huge start in the second half, buried the Cougars, and coasted from there. We talked about some of the key things we saw in the first half that were great, like Nolan Hickman's performance, a great game from Graham Eke. Now I want to go over the keys that we laid out prior to the game on Thursday's episode of Locked On Zags and kind of how those things ended up, what role they ended up playing in this game. Key number one for us going into that game was for the Zags to set the tempo right away. And we talked about the second half, where Gonzaga absolutely imposed their will, their speed, their style on the game. In the first half, though, it wasn't quite the case. Wazoo is one of the few teams that we've seen really try to kind of outrun Gonzaga. And it worked. This was a pretty back and forth game at the beginning. Gonzaga had 6-point lead, 8-point lead, and it was like 19-13, 21-15. Like they were kind of like had a slightly comfortable lead for a while. Wazoo chipped away. Gonzaga would build a little lead. Wazoo would chip away. It kind of just kept happening that way in the first half. And part of it was because both teams had a fair amount of turnovers and both teams were trying to capitalize on that by getting out in transition, running as much as they can. We saw both teams playing at a very frenetic pace, and we've seen teams succeed at speeding up Ryan Nembhard in the past, and that's kind of what happened in that first half before he had to sit with those two fouls and ended up kind of, calming down and being able to play more comfortably, more within himself in the second half. But Gonzaga wasn't really able to set their tempo and play at their speed right out of the chutes in this one. It took a little bit of time. And again, that's why we're so happy to see Gonzaga make the halftime adjustments and be ready to come out of the gate swinging in the second half, because they didn't really do it coming out of the first half. They did finish with 15 fast break points, which is pretty good. Wazoo had 11 of them. And some of the fast break points were, the Nembhard throwaway pass to Braden Huff, the throw ahead pass, We saw Caleb Battle get out in transition a few times. Like we saw Dusty do it. Like this team was able to do so. And a lot of the times that they did get out in transition, that they did set that tempo, has to do with key number two, which was we wanted to see Gonzaga score a ton of points off turnovers and capitalize on Washington State's mistakes. This team is very turnover prone. They were turnover prone coming into this game. We did our preview episode before the game against Pacific, but they were turnover prone against Pacific. And then they were turnover prone here in this game against Gonzaga. Gonzaga's defense has been phenomenal all season long. And with the combination of Gonzaga having a strong defense and with Wazoo turning the ball over a lot, we kind of expected that would be a significant factor in this game. Wazoo turned the basketball over 16 times in this game, leading to 20 points for Gonzaga off of turnovers. Now, the Zags only had 6 steals, so 10 of the turnovers came in different ways. We saw it in a variety of different ways: offensive fouls, traveling violations, things of that nature. But a lot of it stemmed from Gonzaga's quality defense. Sometimes it's just mistakes the other team made, but in a lot of cases, Gonzaga's defense, their presence, their intimidation on that end led to Wazoo making mistakes. Gonzaga capitalizing on those mistakes either by just coming into their half-court offense and getting buckets that way, or in some cases getting the steal, getting out in transition, and scoring that way as well. In terms of steals, 3 of them came from Dusty Stromer. Very, very strong performance from him on both ends of the floor. There's 1 steal each from Eke, Greg, and Ryan Nembhard. And it was a balanced effort from Washington State starters in terms of turnovers. 3 of Wazoo's 5 starters had exactly 4 turnovers. That's Nate Kalmise, Dane Eric Strupp, and Ethan Price. And then Lawan Watts had 3 turnovers as well. So basically there was a plenty of turnovers to go around for the starting 5 for Washington State. And Gonzaga did plenty to capitalize on those mistakes from the Cougars. Key number 3, this was another critical one that worked in Gonzaga's favor in this contest. Get Washington State's bigs in foul trouble and convert at the free throw line. 10 of 13 for Gonzaga at the line, so it doesn't look like a ton of attempts, and 10 of 13 is actually lowers their free throw percentage on the year. They were about 82% coming into this game, or 81%. They shot, I think that's 76%, 10 of 13 is, but we're talking about a tiny sample size at that point. But Washington State had 17 fouls in the game. Key players were limited because of those fouls. Nd Okafor being the most notable. He had a very strong game in the first half. 7 points, 3 of 3 from the field. Was active with the basketball. Was playing good on both ends of the floor. But he picks up 3 fouls in 16 minutes. This is what Nd Okafor does. This has been his season all year long for Wazoo. He plays about 15, 18 minutes per game. He picks up 3 to 4 fouls per game. He often ends up having to sit in the second half in foul trouble, and it hurts this team. And that's what happened in this game. We mentioned it with Graham Eke, 5 of 5 from the line. Just what what an incredible performance from EK from the free throw line this season, coming off of that ridiculous game where he had, what did he have? 13 points at the free throw line in that game against LMU. Just incredible, or against San Diego, excuse me. Incredible stuff for EK. 5 of 5 in this game. Stromer 3 of 4. It was nice to see him drawing contact and getting the line, something we've wanted to see more of from him, and it happened in this game. Huff was 2 of 3. Again, he hasn't been at the line nearly as much as he should be this year. It was nice to see him get there. Nembhard 0 of 1, but nice to see Gonzaga get Ndie Okafor in foul trouble. Again, Lawan Watts and their freshman Thomas Thrasterton each had 3 fouls as well. So got some guys in foul trouble, got some guys sitting on the bench at key moments for Gonzaga to make runs. And of course, Gonzaga, as they've done all year long, capitalized when they did get their opportunities from the stripe. Key number 4 didn't happen the way that we wanted it to happen, but worked out even better. Key number 4 was to not fall in love with a 3-point shot. Wazoo was a better defensive team against the 3-point shot than they were against the 2-point shot, based on matchups, based on the fact that like Cedric Coward was not playing for Wazoo. It felt like a game where we wanted to see Gonzaga really get the ball in the interior and not settle for 3-point shots. And we thought that Wazoo would attempt to make Gonzaga shoot a lot of 3-pointers. I think that was the case. It didn't work because Gonzaga shot 47.6% from 3. Gonzaga took 21 3-pointers. I don't think that that's a too high amount. If you told me after making this key, after talking about this before the game, that Gonzaga was going to take 21 threes, I would have felt okay with that. My concern level would have been like more than 25 or 28, certainly more than 30. We would have been like, what are they doing? Why are they taking so many of them? This team shot 24 of 40 on 2-point attempts in this game. That's 60%. That is extraordinary. Wazoo's interior defense was nowhere good enough to stop Gonzaga from scoring around the rim. But Gonzaga also made 10 of those 21 3-point attempts. What do you do defensively when a team's shooting 60% from 2 and 47% from 3? That is a really, really tough recipe. The second half in particular, Gonzaga was just absolutely lights out in any shot attempt. Again, Zags were 1 of 7 from 3. I thought that we were going to be talking about this as the key reason that Gonzaga either lost or struggled to win this game. But then they finished the first half 4 of 5 from 3 and then just cruised from there from the perimeter. Again, Nolan Hickman, 5 of 8 from 3. Caleb Battle was 2 of 6. Ben Gregg and Dusty Stromer were each 1 of 3. Nembhard had that one step back 3 in the second half over Calmise, which was a phenomenal, beautiful shot for him. Really nice to see this team shoot well from 3, but also nice to see Braden Huff go 4 of 4. Nice to see Graham Ike go 8 of 11, all on 2-point attempts. Nice to see Ben Gregg score around the rim. Like, this team did not sacrifice good looks at the rim for 3-point shots, and that's how they were able to shoot so effectively in both spots against a good Washington State team. Key number 5, we've talked about this quite a bit the last few weeks. We saw it in this game, albeit for different reasons, getting the guards more involved in the offense. We've talked about how when Ryan Nembhard has a bad game, Gonzaga's offense seems to stagnate and struggles. There's not more concrete proof that the Zags have made a concentrated effort to fix this issue than Ryan Nembhard sitting for 9 minutes in the first half and Gonzaga's offense not falling apart. David Riley was asked after the game by Theo Lawson of the Spokesman Review if he felt that his team didn't capitalize enough on Nembhard being on the bench, noting that, Nembhard plays 35 minutes a game and rarely sits for that long. And Riley he didn't talk specifically about that, more so just said there's a lot of things we didn't capitalize. That's a very good team. They have a lot of depth. They don't seem to miss a beat when they have, substitutions in the game. And I think that's the key. Earlier in the year, and we're a year and a half into the Ryan Nembhard experience, and the amount of time that we've had to see Gonzaga's offense without Nembhard is just so limited because he plays almost every minute of every game. But Gonzaga was able to comfortably play without him on the floor, and they relied on Nolan Hickman, who had a phenomenal game, 19 points, 10 shot attempts. He was looking for his shot. He was hunting for his offensive opportunities. He found them. He took advantage of them, and it was the catalyst for Gonzaga winning this basketball game. Dusty Stromer did a great job. 4 free throw attempts is big for him. He had multiple shots around the rim. He also only took 3 3-point attempts, only made 1 of them, but was looking for a shot. Dusty's impact in this game was primarily on the defensive end, but he also looked more aggressive offensively. Again, Caleb Battle, we're not going to say that 4 of 13 is a good offensive night because it's not, but Caleb Battle was aggressive looking for his shot. That's the player Gonzaga recruited. The player Gonzaga wanted when they recruited him out of Arkansas was a player who is aggressive at looking for his shot. That was who we saw in this game. 2 of 7 on 2-pointers without getting to the free throw line is not a great Caliph Battle game. But again, I'd rather he be that player than look tentative, than look like he doesn't know whether he should be shooting, what he should be doing. I want Caliph Battle to be aggressive because for every 4 of 13 game, there's going to be a 25-point night. And while it didn't happen in this game, the fact that Gonzaga was able to still have a strong performance without Battle playing well, with Nembhard sitting as much as he did, is a testament to the other guards on this team, namely Hickman and Stromer, and of course the front court, which had a phenomenal game as well. Well, folks, we're moving on to talk about Lisa Fortier and the Zag women's team. Freshman Allie Turner tied a career high. Gonzaga dominated on the glass to beat Washington State on the road. More on what this win means for the Zags coming up in just a second. Well, folks, conference play is here. There is nothing better than the atmosphere of a conference college basketball matchup, the anticipation of what's about to happen, the energy of the crowd, the unexpected coming to life, Zombie Nation blaring through the kennel, and more. And now Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of different tickets. And it's not just for basketball, but concerts, comedy shows, theater, and more. So whether it's Game Time's ticketing coverage, the lowest price guarantee, or the panoramic views from your seat in the app feature, Game Time has you covered. Gonzaga takes on Oregon State in Corvallis, January 16th, their next game. I'll be in the house. Very much looking forward to going to the Gill Coliseum and seeing this Zags team live again. If you want to come say hi, but you don't have your tickets yet, perfect time. Check out Game Time. They got tickets in the upper balcony. $15 a piece, folks. It's not easy to see Gonzaga play basketball for $15. This is a great opportunity. They also have tickets on the sideline, row 8, available for just $29 a piece. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. We are closing out the show talking about the other Zags win over Washington State on Saturday as the Zag women's team went to Pullman, Washington and knocked off the Cougars. 69-61 was the final score. The Zags now up to 5-2 in conference play. They're 3-1 in road conference games, which includes wins over Portland and Washington State, two of the better teams in the conference. Really nice to see this team continuing to play well after a slow start to the season, after injuries really ravaged them early in the year. This team is rolling right now. That is just a welcome sight after such a struggle to begin the campaign. Zags, similarly to the men's team, lit it up from beyond the arc, 11 of 23. The men's team shot 46.7%. Not a lot of teams shoot better than that, but the women's team, 47.8%. They were a perfect 6 of 6 from the free throw line in this one. Just another very, very strong offensive performance for this club. They also had a monstrous advantage on the glass. 45-22 was the rebounding advantage. To go out on the road and double up a team on the boards is ridiculous. What a run. Huijbens herself had 13 rebounds. 13 rebounds. The entire Wazoo team had 22. That is insane. Really nice stuff from this Zag team. They had 13 total offensive rebounds as a unit. They did have 22 turnovers compared to just 11 for Washington State. Turnovers have been an issue for this team this year. And to double up a team on the glass and shoot this efficiently and only win by 8, there had to be something that didn't go so well, and constantly coughing up the basketball was definitely part of it. The interesting thing was the Cougs had 7 steals. The Zags had just 6. So that means that there was 15 non-steal turnovers by Gonzaga compared to just 5 non-steal turnovers by Washington State. Again, unforced errors, traveling violations, offensive fouls, throwing the ball out of bounds, things like that have been an issue for this team throughout the year. We'll continue to make games that shouldn't be as close, a little bit closer, hopefully something that Coach Fortier and the staff can iron out as the year goes on. Really nice to see this team have some real depth, though. 8 players who played for Gonzaga in this game played 10 or more minutes. In fact, 7 of those players played 19 or more minutes. So nice to have the kind of depth where you can have 7 players playing 20 plus minutes. Brice Allenbien played 10 minutes, and then McKinley Dallin played 1 minute to give them 9 total players in this contest. Some key performances. We mentioned Allie Turner, 20 points for her. That ties her career high. 6 boards, 5 assists, 0 turnovers. 7 of 14 from the field. She was 4 of 10 from 3. She was 2 of 2 from the free throw line. What a great performance. 40% from 3, 75% on 2-pointers, 100% from the free throw line, 5 assists, 0 turnovers for a true freshman in a solid road environment against a good team in conference play. That is tremendous. Allie Turner has been a revelation for this team. One of the very, 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 very bright, not few bright spots. They've had more than a few bright spots, but one of the biggest stars on this team, one of the most unexpected surprises coming into the season. Allie Turner, absolutely incredible. Again, this team had 22 turnovers. One of their star players, their leading scorer, 0 of them. Tremendous stuff from Allie. Yvonne Ejim continued to play like Yvonne Ejim does, 17 points, 8 rebounds, 4 offensive, 4 defensive. She had a pair of assists. She did have 6 turnovers. Part of the issue was Yvonne turning the basketball over in this game. 7 of 15 from the field. That included going 1 of 2 from the stripe, 1 of 2 from the 3-point line, and 2 of 2 from the free throw line for Yvonne, who is one of the top 25 candidates to win the Player of the Year award in women's basketball. Also got to give a shout out to Claire O'Connor, sophomore guard, 10 points for her, 4 steals, 3 turnovers, 4 of 5 shooting, including knocking down 2 of her 3 3-point attempts. And then Inez Betancourt stepping into the starting lineup to replace Esther Little. Both played solid minutes. Little played 19 minutes in this game, had 2 points and 5 boards, but she did have 4 turnovers. Meanwhile, Betancourt, 7 points and 5 assists for her, as well as 3 boards, also 4 turnovers. She shot 2 of 3 in 28 minutes. We mentioned Maud Huijbens earlier, 13 rebounds and 2 blocks. She only had 2 points on 1 of 7 shooting, so an uncharacteristically off night for her in terms of shooting the basketball, especially on a day where pretty much everybody else for Gonzaga shot it really well, but 13 rebounds and 2 blocks. I mean, just an absolute anchor for this team defensively and a huge part of their success, even if she didn't have the type of game she typically does offensively. And then last but not least, Taylor Dalton, 6 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, and a block in 20 minutes coming off the bench, 2 of 2 shooting the ball, both 3-point attempts. Mainly wanted to shout her out because she crossed the 1,000 points scored threshold in her career. It's mostly spent at St. Mary's the last 4 years with the Gales, and then this year being her final year of eligibility spent in Spokane with the Zags. She missed the start of the season with an injury, has been back for a few weeks now. To see her cross 1,000 points for her career, just a really nice accomplishment for a very talented player and a key part of this team, somebody who I expect to see her playing time 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes to continue to grow as she kind of gets back into game shape, which we've seen with her strong performances as of late. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. It was a phenomenal Saturday of beating up on Washington State. You love to see it for Gonzaga, so really fun to talk about that. We're going to have the men's team play at Oregon State on Thursday. We'll get you ready for that game. We'll do some WCC recaps, talk a bit big picture about this Gonzaga team as well, all coming up later this week. Thanks again for listening, and as always, especially after a fun Saturday of beating Washington State, go Zags.